Hello and welcome. My name is Musam Khalipi and this is Afroshowbiz News, the show where you get to find out all things art and entertainment from around Africa. Now send us those emails if you want to keep in touch. Our email address is afroshowbiznews@sabc.co.za. Also follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @AfroShowbizNews. Now for stories making headlines this week. The show 99% Zulu returns. Women in the Niger Delta use film to highlight some of their problems. And we pay tribute to Professor Mbulelo Zamani. 99% Zulu has returned to the Lyric Theatre in Gold Reef City in Johannesburg this weekend. During its last round of comedy show, proved to be really popular.
If I was one of the organizers, organizer 2010, was going to use that track.
There are not that many African language comedy shows in South Africa. That's probably the reason 99% Zulu is really popular. It prides itself as one of the widest traveling productions in the country. The show has an excellent track record for delivering authentic South African humor and non-stop laughs. If you've somehow missed the previous shows, don't miss this one. The show will be emceed by Tall Ass Mo, who also featured in a number of comedy shows.
This guy doesn't know how to throw the mateba chai. Watch me.
This year's lineup promises to leave the audiences in stitches with performances from Bukane, Siande Mapumulo, Malintuli, Simpiwe Shembe, and Mashabela. The general aim of 99% Zulu comedy is to create a deliberate interest in stand-up comedy within African language speakers, while also seeking to address a wide range of social challenges facing the country. Seri Dupree is bringing his celebrity impersonations to Johannesburg. Audiences will be treated to nights of glitz and glamour and Cher, Lady Gaga, Tina Turner and more impersonations.
My name is Dolly Parton and I sing country. I'm Dolly Parton, I'm a singing country queen.
Evenings of comedy, amazing vocal impersonations and colorful costumes are only one part of the Seri Dupree show. The fabulous Seri Dupree is back on his new one-man Divalicious show, now taking place at Johannesburg's Empress Palace. The hilarious show features the greatest hits by some of music's leading ladies, with a variety of glitzy costumes, hairpieces and makeup to match. The UK-born entertainer will use his flair for comedy to provide evenings of entertainment. Seri Dupree has been delighting audiences worldwide for almost 30 years. His talents have seen him perform globally. On television, Seri has wowed audiences with his 4-part television show called Seri Dupree Unfrocked and has also appeared on numerous chat and radio shows.
Come up and see me sometime. I love nothing on but the radio. It's not the man in my life, it's the life of my man.
His first professional performance was at the Palace Theatre on Swansea's High Street in 1983 in the United Kingdom. Players in South Africa's music industry will attend the Music Exchange program in Cape Town, South Africa, which kicked off this weekend. To tell us more about the event is composer, singer, as well as panel member at the Exchange, Oriel Hayes. Hello, Oriel, and welcome to Afroshowbiz News.
Hi there, it's so good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Now, Oriel, could you please tell us what the Music Exchange program entails?
You know, I must be honest, I was very surprised at the level of expertise that they had there. Basically, at the Music Exchange, you have people from every aspect of the industry sharing their knowledge to basically anyone who will listen.
All right,
so it's been amazingly informative in that aspect.
All right. Now, Oriel, the Music Exchange provides platforms for participants. Why do you think this is important? Because they deal with global issues, I believe. So why do you think that these platforms are important?
Well, the fact of the matter is that there's so much information out there that is not getting to the musicians that are trying to make it. One of the very big themes that came through is that we as South Africans, we as Africans, we have to embrace what is unique about us and about our music, and that our stories really come through. You know, and I really, that for me was a really, really big a big message that came through, and that more social cohesion is really, really needed so we can make a bigger impact. And of course, musicians, aside from the creativity, we need to know the business ins and outs, and that's what all musicians and artists are really learning from the Music Exchange.
All right. Now, Oriel, please take us through some of the artists that will be at this Music Exchange.
Well, one of the obviously there's Sipho Hotsticks Mabusa who was there, and that for me was just such a revelation. And he was speaking about his journey. We had Vicky Sampson who was there, Maini Gervier was there. There were a lot of the heavyweights from our past, legends and icons that are there. And then obviously you had AKA, you had Jimmy Nevis, there were just so many people. I wish I could just remember all of them there. But I mean, if the normal artist or came there, they'd quite be surprised by who it is that they get to engage with, because these artists, up and coming and new, they are so approachable. So you can just go up to them and say, you know, what advice can you give me about this? And you get your answer. So it's a way for many people to get that information that they would not normally have gotten.
All right. Now, Oriel, you yourself are a musician and composer. What is your role in this Music Exchange this year?
Well, one of the things that they asked was how it is that we sustain ourselves. What are the problems that we are experiencing within the industry, and what we can do to change it. And it's also about sharing everything that you've learned, you know. And that's, I think, is really, really important. That's, you share what it is you know with whoever wants to know.
Now, Oriel, this is not the first Music Exchange. I believe there have been other Music Exchange. How has this event helped perfect the craft of musicians from South Africa?
I mean, you know that the keynote speaker was Mos Def. Did you know that?
Yes.
I mean, that was just such an amazing thing. And that he committed himself to not only helping out with our with the industry, but he shared his love for South Africa and Africa. The level, the speakers that they have are so knowledgeable. So every year, what I found looking back is that it just gets better and better and better. And the problem really is, and I made the comment yesterday, if this were held in Johannesburg, everyone would be there. It would be full. And it was a good attendance, and people really were talking to each other during and before, and it's a great buzz going on. But it really saddens me that not more artists are there, you know. Like I said, if it was in Joburg, that place would be full because it was Mos Def. And he was amazing, he was so inspiring. So I hope that more people get behind this conference.
All right, well, thank you, Oriel. That is where we'll have to leave it today, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
All right, that was Oriel joining us from the SABC Cape Town studios. Welcome back. On Sunday evening, Lupita Nyongo moved hearts all over the world as she told people everywhere that her dreams are valid. The Kenyan actress is the first from her country to win an Academy Award. Her Best Actress Oscar win has inspired many in Kenya.
This was Lupita Nyongo at the Oscars on Sunday. Back in Kenya, acting is often not considered a career. Nyongo's victory has made the headlines in all of the country's newspapers. People on cafes, roadsides, and all over are claiming Nyongo's achievement.
It was great news because honestly, as Kenyans, you need to be known everywhere around the world. And it's good to see that a woman can represent Kenya, not necessarily a man, because Kenya honestly is going far as it is.
This was Nyongo's first role in a film after she had completed postgraduate studies in America.
Can I help you?
No, I was just saying there's a very nice picnic site just up the road there.
Thank you.
You'll probably find company instead of camping out here in there.
She had done an HIV awareness series, Sugar, in her native Kenya.
In fact, when she told me that she was going to Yale to study acting, I was like, you know, in Kenya, that's not a career per se, even especially in those years. It was something that you do on the side while you're studying for something.
Drama and performance teacher Patrick Tia, who helped encourage Nyongo's interest in acting.
The greatest thing for a teacher is to be able to see somebody you've worked with getting to that point, you know, where they're receiving accolades all over. There's nothing that gives a teacher so much joy than that.
His children at her former school, her title is a sign that they too can achieve the same success and perhaps bring other high-profile awards to the East African country. In Hollywood, Nyongo continues to celebrate.
A film about the genocide in Rwanda, Imbabaza, The Pardon, has shown at the Euro African Film Festival. The story is told through two friends. Imbabaza, The Pardon follows the story of best friends Manzi and Karemera, who find themselves on opposing sides in Rwanda's ethnic civil war. The two are from opposing tribes, the Tutsis and the Hutus. During the ethnic conflict in Rwanda in 1994, in which up to 1 million people were killed, the Hutu majority in the country persecuted and tried to wipe out the Tutsi population. Manzi had to choose between friendship and family. Under the pressure of his ethnic group, family, and the Hutu government, the consequence of Manzi's choice was his brutal murder of Karemera's family, leading Karemera to later seek revenge. The emotional and yet gruesome film focuses on the characters rather than the historical events. The central relationship of the film tells the larger story of the genocide. The film was previously shown at the Pan-African Film Festival, the Chicago Film Festival, and more. Today, we are going to pay tribute to Professor Mbulelo Zamani, who passed on last month of February. He was a writer, an intellectual, and academic whose books include The Children of Soweto, Children of the Diaspora, Mzala, to name a few. To celebrate his life, we are joined in studio by Professor Aubrey Mogadi, who worked closely with him on other projects to tell us more about the starring giants. Hello and welcome to you, Professor.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Now, Professor, please take us through what was Mbulelo's contribution to the South African literature?
As you rightly pointed out to the viewers, you know, he was a writer, an academic of note, and a very prolific writer, a literary giant who has contributed immensely to the development of literature and understanding of our history as well as understanding of languages. And he's, with regard to, for example, understanding of history, he's contributed immensely in an angle that many people do not actually delve into, which is understanding history from an insider point of view. What I mean by that is normally we look at history as from a perspective of written documentation, documentaries and so forth. For example, 1976, we read a lot about it from what has been said in the press as well as other books and so forth. But Zamani's contribution was to look at it from an insider's point of view, in other words, to understand those nuances that were experienced by people per se and write creatively from their perspective.
Now, Professor, if may I just interrupt you there, could you maybe please explain to us what were some of the projects that he was working on before he passed on?
He has worked on various projects, the development of language, but in particular, I know he was working on a book on Thabo Mbeki. He was providing something very different that people had not known about Mbeki. As somebody who had lived in exile for a long time, he understood a lot of what happened to the former president Thabo Mbeki. So he was working on that project, and I know that the book may be published posthumously.
Now, Professor, please tell us, where do you think he drew his inspiration from?
Well, we know of literary giants like Ken Temba, Eskia Mpahlele. So South Africa has a very rich and diverse history of people who have contributed to literature. So those are people who had inspired him in terms of writing.
Now, what are your fondest memories of Mbulelo Zamani?
He had a very tacit sense of humor. In the midst of a crisis, he would say something that really raises people's emotions to ward away from the hard reality of what was going on. If you don't mind, I could just read an example of, in the midst of the pain of 1976, he just writes something that, you know, enlightens the situation and enlightens the burden. Can I do that? All right. This is taken from his book, The Children of Soweto.
All right.
And he writes about this person, Brapi, but he writes so imaginatively and passionately about him so that people can actually move away from the pain of the bullets that killed people in 1976. He says Brapi was so enigmatic that he might have been a character straight out of Canary Rao. He was held in awe and respect by both the old and the young of Soweto. Although precisely on what his reputation rested, nobody could say. And then he goes on to write about that, and he draws readers like into that world of Brapi. We still have such characters in the country today that, in spite of poverty, in spite of crime, they actually lighten the moment and make us realize that there is something more to life rather than just concentrating on the pain of the moment.
All right, Professor, it's been a pleasure having you, but unfortunately that is where we'll have to leave it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Ivory Coast Museum of Civilization is celebrating the life and the work of popular Ivorian artist Frederick Bruli Boba. He is often referred to as one of the most unique African contemporary artists.
The Ivorian capital, Abidjan, is home to the Museum of Civilization. This is where Frederick Bruli Bobra's work is on show. Bobra died last week at the age of 91. Born in the central western Ivory Coast, he drew his inspiration from the strong cultural and artistic roots of his people, the Bete. His most celebrated work consists of hundreds of small drawings depicting different subjects.
What you need to understand about Bruli Boabre is that he strongly believed that even though we have different skin color, we are all born the same.
Boabre created a 448 pictograms alphabet to represent phonetic syllables. In the last 25 years, his work has been extensively exhibited around the world.
He has left a whole institution that children from all over the world can refer to. When you look at his art, each piece speaks to our environment, our culture and the reality we live in, and anyone in the world.
Boabre is survived by his 3 wives, 15 children, and 40 grandchildren. His family often talks about his works and contribution to art whenever they get together.
I must admit that I think he was a workaholic. His drawings kept him alive. It was his passion. He would have so much work to the point where we would also chip in and help him with his work.
Boabre will be buried in his hometown of Bete later this month.
This week's book is titled Daughters Who Walk This Path. It's the debut novel by Nigerian author Yegide Gilango. The story takes us to Ibadan, Nigeria, where we learn about the lives of 2 people, a little girl Marayo and her aunt. They both suffer physical abuse in the hands of relatives. Author Gilango, who is a social worker, takes us on an emotional journey of what can happen to a woman when she suffers abuse. Through the lives of these 2 women, readers also get to understand the culture of Ibadan. You are still watching Afroshowbiz News. If you have missed any of our shows, be sure to catch us on our YouTube channel. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right after. A documentary titled Inconels Shadow has been released. It was done to mark International Day Against the Use of Child Soldiers. It is done by Christian Aid.
Inconels Shadow is a new online multimedia exhibition that tells stories of Uganda's war conflict. The documentary tells a story of communities living in fear long after the war has ended.
Beating me, frightening me, is to make me obedient to them.
The story is told by Norman Okello, who was abducted at just 12 years old. As a child, he was forced to kill and mutilate for the Lord's Resistance Army.
You kill, you abduct, you kill, you abduct. When they
Norman's story shines a light on one of the world's most secretive and dedicated rebel groups and reveals his constant struggle to keep his humanity intact. Norman's story is part of Inconels Shadow, a multimedia production by Christian Aid, which tells the story of the Lord's Resistance Army and those it left behind. Using films, photography, and written testimonies, Christian Aid explores the stories of those who survived the terror of the 19-year Lord's Resistance Army insurgents in northern Uganda. Norman's parents struggled to accept their son, who is now a trained killer, when he returned home. The exhibition also examines how the National Peace and Memory Documentation Center is helping survivors of the conflict. The documentary opened in London on Wednesday and will run until the 16th of March.
Although I feel excited about my future, but also I feel hearted about my past, about the childhood I lost when I was young.
Women in Nigeria's Delta region produce films to highlight social issues that affect their lives every day.
Women in rural Nigeria are getting film production skills. Some of their work is to show on a mobile cinema. The cinema is traveling through the country's Niger Delta region. A Nigerian-based non-governmental organization is training young women living in the Niger Delta in film production, with a successful production of a documentary called Daughters of the Niger Delta.
So when my husband is alive, my children used to chop.
The NGO kicked off an awareness campaign. The aim of the mobile cinema project is to spark dialogue and engage community members in social development.
We are facilitating gender needs assessment because as we go around the communities during these mobile cinema screenings, some communities express interest for further engagement so that they can articulate these issues and think of how they could resolve them. So we, at the moment, facilitating gender needs assessment where community members are looking critically into issues that affect them.
The organization is currently taking the movie to various neighborhoods affected by oil spills.
We're trying to strengthen the voices of women, particularly young women in the Niger Delta. And instead of bringing in an external film crew to document the lives and the needs of women, we decided to empower young women from the region to do so themselves. So we train them in human rights, we train them in community research, and we train them in filmmaking to enable them to tell their own stories, identify the issues that they want to share with the world.
Many spills in the area are caused by oil theft and pipeline sabotage, a crime committed daily in the region. Currently, oil companies are required to fund cleanup processes, but some don't. So far, the film has won 3 international awards in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Nigeria.
A book on Ruth First and Joe Slovo in the War Against Apartheid by Alan Weeder has been launched sometime this week.
The book, named and styled In the War Against Apartheid, the first extended biography of Ruth First and Joe Slovo, is a remarkable account of one couple and a revolutionary moment in which they lived. Alan Weeder's heavily researched work draws on the usual primary and secondary sources, but also an extensive oral history that he has collected over many years. By mixing the documentary record with personal interviews, Weeder portrays the differences and contradictions of this extraordinary couple and their efforts to navigate a time of great tension, upheaval, and revolutionary hope.
That is all we have for today. Do join us next week, Saturday at 7:30 for the latest in African entertainment. Also watch the repeats every Sunday at 2 a.m. and again at 1:30 p.m. We'll now be playing out with RJ Benjamin, who will be taking part at this year's Music Exchange. Do enjoy. From me and the crew, it's thank you and goodbye.
never was your ordinary lover. I never hurt you and just walk away. And though you came to me when I was under, our lives began to move in separate ways. I never thought our love would last forever, but I never wanted things to end this way. Now I lie here cold and alone, nobody's home. I know I'll make it on my own. It'll turn out right for me, baby, gonna make it on my own. Start a brand new life without you, baby, never gonna be alone. It's not a fantasy, I'm free, baby, and the love we had is gone. Possibilities out there, baby, gonna make it on my own. Whatever you have left me, I'll remember. And loving you was not a waste of time. I know that sometimes I was too short-tempered, but never did you speak your heart and mind to me. And no, I never said it would be easy without you, but I will never put my life on hold again.